Hello. Good to be here, Rodney, with you again. No Zach today. He's working hard. We're going to be doing a podcast next week with old mates from Box of Neutrals to wrap up the season. But I thought, well, you know, as much as I like doing video stuff, and we stream our podcasts and stuff, they're not going to want to do video stuff. So I thought, well, that kind of leaves the option of just doing a quickie video stream. And that way we can wrap up the season and cover all the stories. And then we'll do the podcast with them. That'll be a lot of fun. Hope you check that out. But it'll be audio only. So this gives you a chance to have some video stuff to finish off the year. It makes sense to me. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but anyway. We're here to do this.
Wow, I guess this is a big moment. I should care about it.
We say that. We're going to say that a few times, I think, tonight. So what are the big stories? We did a podcast since Max Verstappen won the Drivers' Championship, but we haven't, it's only been a few days ago since McLaren claimed the Constructors, so we're going to get into that. We're also going to get into just some of the really weird stories. George Russell versus Max Verstappen, the F1 Academy BS that went down. I was going to cover some of the F1 DNI charter, but I read through it and there's nothing there. There's nothing there to talk about. It's so light on for details, it's not even funny. So I was like, is the story that there's no details? But then I was like, so you spend 10 minutes reading it all and then just go, well, there's nothing here. I don't know that that's very interesting for anyone. So I don't think that we'll be doing that. But the thing I wanted to start with is McLaren. So it went right down to the wire, and I think that's really the point, is that McLaren really did it hard. Zach Brown said that the race in Abu Dhabi was the worst 2 hours of his life. I guess because he was just sitting there worried that something would go wrong and his dream would end. So Ferrari really pushed them. Ferrari really needed to win and outscore McLaren and do so by just enough points that they would be able to pip it. Leclerc was also in contention for P2 for the championship, and that looked pretty unlikely after he was knocked out in qualifying because he went slightly off track, so his time got deleted, then he was eliminated, and he had a 10-place grid penalty. So the chances of him beating Norris always looked pretty slim. But the championship for the team was still up for grabs, and, Leclerc looked pretty upset at the end of the race when he, he was told, it's not going to happen. He was like, I wanted to win it for Carlos. I think he wanted to win it for Ferrari. I think he also wanted to prove, in my personal opinion, I think he wanted to prove to Ferrari that he was part of an effort and a year where they won the championship and he didn't need Lewis to do that. I think a part of him, I think it might have been at the back of his mind, maybe. But still, they didn't win. Now, they really pushed them to the end. And this is the point I'm going to get to, is how close it was. And really, McLaren, there's been this debate kind of all year about whether McLaren had the fastest car, whether Ferrari had the fastest car. And, it just seems to me all year that I would argue that Ferrari had the faster car and were better across the course of the season. There are people who will say, no, clearly McLaren had the better car over the balance of the season. But when you think about it, it got so close. It really went down to the wire. And yes, Norris won the last race, lights the flag, made it look easy. But if anything had happened, if he got a puncture, if there was a bad pit stop, if he put it in the wall, someone hit him, some back marker hit him, who knows what. It would have swung the other way because Ferrari would have been 1 and 2, right? So it really went down to the wire and it was very close between the two. And then when you factor in this, which is that McLaren have become the first team in history to have no official DNFs in terms of results. Now, I think Norris DNF'd in a sprint race. I think we all know sprint races don't count. That's bullshit. And there was one race where I don't think he finished, but he did 90 laps, so he gets classified as finishing. But yeah, McLaren, the first team in history with no DNFs for either driver, no full DNFs for either driver. You also, I noticed it's in the comments here. Oscar completed every lap this season. He's only the fourth driver after Schumacher, Verstappen, and Hamilton to do that, and he's the only non-championship winning driver to do that. So, I mean, when we think about what made the difference between Ferrari and McLaren this year, it was kind of that, because it was so close, and Ferrari almost won it. But when you factor in McLaren had better reliability and better race performance, like not hitting each other cars and stuff, it was really not finished. It was really not getting any DNFs. It was really finishing that gave them the edge. So, as much as it might seem at first glance that McLaren were clearly the better car, I actually think the fact that they didn't have any DNFs, Oscar finished every single racing lap that there was, I actually think that tips the scales the other way and suggests, well, maybe Ferrari had the better car, and if they had no DNFs, and if they had finished every racing lap and things might have swung the other way. I don't know. Maybe not. Also, makes a bit of a point with Oscar finishing every racing lap. Makes a bit of a point about how much of a difference the teammates make, because I saw a stat before Abu Dhabi, and I don't know if this is still true after the results of Abu Dhabi, but there was a stat going around that was like, if Perez had scored half of the points that Verstappen did, they would be leading the championship. Which is really something to think about. And I don't want to take anything away from McLaren or either of the drivers who did really well this year. But, I mean, it really puts it in perspective that even though Red Bull didn't have a great year, even if Perez had done half as well as Max, they would have led. I mean, that really says something, right? And if Perez was there, Ferrari and McLaren would have scored fewer points. They would have had to. It's like Perez being there would have taken points away from them. So look, yeah, they can celebrate and everything, but like if Red Bull, let's just say Red Bull replace Perez with someone else and they can find some form next year for some of the season, not even all of the season, we might still be looking at some Red Bull dominance next year. Just saying, sorry, I don't want to rain on anyone's parade, but that's just the way it might go. That said, Ferrari, I think next year will be really gunning because they obviously at the start of this year did this.
Lewis, I love you and respect you.
And Lewis is moving into red overalls. The other thing, oh man, how many clips and how many edits and how many like tributes were there going to be to Lewis Hamilton? Like his last race with Mercedes. Like I know they were very dominant. I get it. They really defined the current era of Formula One. But like he's not dying. He's not leaving. He's not even retiring. Just moving from one team to another. Like it was so weird when people were like, I'm crying because this is Lewis's last race with Mercedes. I was like, but he's just going to like, he'll be back in 2 months racing for Ferrari. I just find that very strange. Like he's not going anywhere. He's still going to be around. Whatever. But yeah. Well done to McLaren. Their first championship since 1998. The first year that I started watching Formula One full-time, hardcore. The first full season that I remember watching. And by the way, not for nothing, 1998 is an absolute cracker of a season. So if you haven't looked through even the highlights of that season, you should go seek it out. Actually, one of the really fun things about the 1998 season, now that we're talking about it, is obviously the Belgian Grand Prix that year was crazy bonkers. I've seen that it's on YouTube, and if you want to go and watch the whole race, you can. But the thing of it is, the whoever uploaded it was like, what would it be like to watch the Belgian 1998 Grand Prix with modern graphics? Which I could care less necessarily about that. In fact, some of the fun of watching those old races is the old graphics. But, I mean, look, it means that it's available, and it means that if you want to go watch it, you can go watch it. 1998 Belgian Grand Prix, I recommend it. But you can go and watch McLaren in their heyday and draw some parallels between how good they were then and how good they are now. As always, since we're on a live stream, if you have any questions or comments you want to chuck in the chat, feel free. I'll give them a shout out if I can. In the meantime, I'm just going to cover off some silly, dumb stories. So, yeah, well done Verstappen. Well done McLaren. Really well done McLaren. Really well done to Lando Norris, who won the last race, and it really set him apart from, I mean, other than the fact that he was in the championship fight, he was the only contender to Max. Really made it look like it was maybe less dominant than it maybe was because of the fact that there were a bunch of other drivers right behind him on almost the same number of wins. So getting one more win at the end was really helpful for Norris. And of course, he was in battles with, for example, Verstappen at like Austria, where he should have really won that one. He took himself out of contention at races like Hungary. Even races like Brazil could have swung his way, but, you know, he got unlucky with rain and red flags and his own errors. And, you know, he could have had a much more dominant year than he did, but it just looked weird for a long time for him to be almost equal on wins with three other drivers or four other drivers. Like, dude, come on. But yeah, at the end of the day, a good season from him. And he deserves everything that he got. We move on from there to something silly, though. This was, everybody saw this. So big news from Max Verstappen camp is that he announced at the last race that he's having a baby with his partner, Kelly Piquet. So that's obviously daughter of Nelson Piquet, right? Everyone knows that. And she already has a daughter, and Max he calls himself bonus dad. So he's already playing a father figure role for one young child who is adorable. But now he and his partner are going to have their own child, which is great. Great blessing. And then obviously very happy about that. All the jokes about, you know, how many penalty points is he on? Well, maybe he'll take himself out of contention and rack up the super license penalty points and then sit out a race or two when the baby arrives and he can take paternity leave and blah, blah, blah. It's all good fun. But then something caught my eye and it really got my goat. So I chirped off about it online and I just want to cover off some of this. This was me. Of course this was me. I was in a grumpy mood this day. Horrifying late capitalism on display with the announcement of a pregnancy coming with a dedicated merch drop. So I had seen posts. People were posting online. Max Verstappen having a baby. Oh, and he's just announced some new baby clothes. I bought them. Yay. And I was like, what? What? That's so... Ugh. Like, you can sell baby clothes, but can't and the announcement of a pregnancy just be a pregnancy and you're not trying to leverage that for commercial gain? Can we just not do that all the time? I'm getting really tired of it. So I posted this for a while. Now it has more likes. For a while, I was getting ratioed pretty hard here. But someone was pointing out, yeah, he's been selling baby clothes for a long time. You know, they switched from summer and winter collection, so they were always going to launch a new collection. The fact that he's now having a baby has nothing to do with it. And I was like, doesn't it though? And then, you know, I posted, are you denying that he was leveraging his news to sell a new range of children's clothes? And then someone else, I don't know why this person felt the need to chip in. You already sold baby clothes. What are you blabbering about? I said, yeah, dude, I never said that he had never sold baby's clothes. I just said that he's selling new baby clothes. And it comes literally in the same breath of him saying, we're having a baby. And they're like, well, why are you implying that it has something to do with his pregnancy? He was already selling clothes and you acknowledge that he was already selling clothes. I'm like, my dude, you're not getting it. Look at this. This is only the Verstappen website. You can see this button here, shop now. Max and his girlfriend Kelly are expecting a baby. The happy couple announced this joyful news via a post on Instagram. Mini Verstappen, so the obvious play on Max Verstappen is Mini Verstappen. Mini Verstappen Piquet on the way. We couldn't be happier with that little miracle, the message reads. And then the website goes on. This is on the homepage of the website. For parents who are as passionate about racing as Max, there's a unique line of Max Verstappen baby items. Whether you choose a stylish baby onesie or a romper featuring Max's iconic racing number, these items bring a touch of Formula One to your little one's life. I'm not against Max selling baby clothes or announcing that he has a baby or doing both, but I just feel like we can we just put a little gap between these two things? Can we just have a nice announcement that isn't immediately followed after half a breath with like, go and buy some, like, I just feel so icky about all that. I don't like that. Sorry. People can buy Max's baby clothes if they want. I don't care. I don't care. You buy it. Even if you like it and you want it, get it. You don't even have to have a baby. Just go and buy it. That's fine. I don't have any problem with that. But when I say I feel icky that Max is saying we're having a baby, please go and buy baby clothes in the same breath, and people are telling me that he's not doing that, but he clearly is, I get annoyed. Anyway, that wasn't even the big story about Max Verstappen from the last week, because you might remember. And things have calmed down now that the season's over. And Verstappen seems to be really in, the baby's announced. He's won the championship. Everything is good. Even when he hit, I was going to say he hit Oscar Piastri, knocked him out of the race, knocked him out of contention and got a penalty. Even though it was the first corner. I know. They sometimes let stuff go in the first corner, but when you hit the guy in P2 and knock him to the last, you've got to get a penalty for that. But the big story before all of that was this. George Greg Russell, the man with the most punchable face in Formula One, versus Max Verstappen. Let's see if we can make this a bit more readable. Russell reveals Verstappen threat in response to World Champs comments. So obviously the way this went down was, where was it, qualifying, and Verstappen impeded Russell. I know he wasn't on a push lap, yada, yada, yada. Russell was keeping to his time, Verstappen wasn't. And he had to take evasive action, and he said, that's dangerous. And it went to the stewards. Russell said, I don't know what to tell you. I was on my time. Verstappen was going slow on the racing line. That's dangerous. And the stewards decided to give him a penalty, and Max was not happy, to say the least. Saying some shit like, I wasn't even going to challenge you, but now I'm going to, he said, I'm going to race you, but what Russell says, we'll get into. So that really kicked things off, and there was a back and forth. So let's read a little bit of this here. George Russell has launched a scathing attack on Max Verstappen following the world champion's criticism of his conduct in the stewards' room in Qatar. Verstappen said he lost all respect for Russell because I've never seen someone trying to screw someone over that hard after the Dutchman received a one-place grid penalty for driving too slowly in qualifying. Verstappen made even stronger comments to Dutch television post-race. For all the people who, because I chirp off about British bias all the time, and they're like, well, what do you want? A Dutch commentator? Do you want Dutch media? I'm like, why not? I mean, who cares where they're from? If we can't have neutral commentary and neutral media, then let's have mixed nationality. I don't know. But wouldn't it be better? I mean, wouldn't it be better if everybody had access to the comments that Verstappen made to everybody, because he tells the Dutch people one thing and tells everybody else a different thing? Anyway, Russell claims the four-time world champion was threatening to intentionally take him out of the race. I find it all quite ironic, seeing as Saturday night he said to me he was going to purposefully go out of his way to crash into me and put me on my fucking head in the wall. Russell told select media, including Racer. Just say media, man. We get it. You were there. You're cool. We understand. So to question someone's integrity as a person while saying comments like that the day before, I find is very ironic, and I'm not going to sit here and accept it. George Russell has absolutely had enough, and he's not going to take it anymore. People have been bullied by Max for years now, and you can't question his driving abilities, but he cannot deal with adversity. Whenever anything goes against him, Jeddah 21, Brazil 21, he lashes out. Budapest this year. The very first race, the car wasn't dominant, crashing into Lewis Hamilton, slamming his team. For me, those comments are, blah, blah, blah. He's taking it too far. So this really kicked off a whole bunch of stuff. And, Max says Russell was trying to screw me in the steward's room. Then Russell says, yeah, well, we walked out of the steward's room. And Max was so pissed off that he said he was going to crash into me and knock me on my fucking head and put me in the wall. And then he goes and tells the media that, and he's like, I'm not going to be bullied by this guy. And then Verstappen says, no, I didn't say it like that, which is an interesting response, because he doesn't say I didn't say that. He says I didn't say it like that, which means he did say it like that. But then, I mean, things got obviously really weird when, like, George Greg Russell held his own press conference because he wasn't part of the FIA films, you know, the FOM media conference. He made his own one, and he said, you know, here's what's going on, and I don't like it, and I don't think it's acceptable. Toto Wolff also, like, because Christian Horner had come out and said, yeah, this guy Russell, he's a bit sensitive, and he's not really not really emotionally, or whatever he said, not in a good place for talking about this or something. And then Toto was like, how dare you, Christian Horner, talk about way about my driver, about his mentality. And it's like, God, just everybody calm down. A real war of words, you could say. Everyone I think thought it was just a bit of fun. And then I saw the headlines and all these YouTube like thumbnails that were like, these two, a war has broken out. It's like, well, 2 days later, it's all over. So not much of a war, is it? But things really came to a head for me when Verstappen said, yeah, this guy Russell, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't have any respect for him, and he's going to talk about me like this to the press, cause all this, you know, aggro. Maybe he shouldn't be heading up the GPDA. And I was like, oh, this is what this is about. That's clearly what this is all about, if you ask me. For a few reasons. Because number one, there was that statement that got sent by the GPDA to the FIA saying we want answers. We've been asking for transparency. We don't like these fines that we're getting. We don't like getting fines for swearing and penalties for swearing and yada, yada, yada. Update on that is that it's been revealed that at the FIA prize giving ceremony, Max Verstappen will have to work with, you know, some junior driving club or something in Rwanda where the ceremony is. Someone in the FA's got connections to Rwanda. They bloody love that place right now, eh? So Max is going to have to do that. And he's clearly pissed off about it. Clearly annoyed that George Russell, I don't know, isn't being strong enough or something. Classic Max Verstappen way of thinking. And he's not happy that things have not progressed in his favor in that regard. And he's sowing seeds of doubt with everybody about George Greg Russell's ability and suitability for being the GPDA representative, which it's very I don't want to be the George Russell here, but it's very clear to me that Max Verstappen is clearly the aggressor here. He clearly said the things that George Russell said that he did. Like, I don't believe for a second that Max Verstappen did not say those things to George Russell and that George Russell's making that up. I just don't believe that. George Russell said something like Max Verstappen was swearing at the stewards, and everybody, well, not everybody, but a few people have said, no, he wasn't swearing at the stewards. I don't know what you're talking about. But I think that's just clumsy communication from George Craig Russell. I reckon as soon as I got out of that steward's room, Verstappen was like this.
I think if I get a few more, I'll headbutt someone.
And then George Russell was like this.
I'm tripping major nutsack right now.
Or something like that. And then Verstappen was so scared, he was like...
Mate, where's the toilet paper?
But, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that Max Verstappen is kind of in the wrong if you want to assign right and wrong here. So for Max Verstappen to then turn that around and say, yeah, this George Russell guy, I don't know that he's the right person. I don't think he has the leadership qualities for this responsibility that he has leading the GPDA. It's like, what? What? Who should? You? Give me a break. Give me a break. And now it's all over. So we'll see what happens next year. The funny thing for me, I think, is that if those two come together again, if they're alongside each other on the grid or who knows what, and there's any reason for Max Verstappen to get annoyed, it could all spark off again because, you know, Max Verstappen is like flint, and all he needs is a little spark. And it's clear that George Russell doesn't mind sparking off. So that's that. That's my take on all that. I was going to go, like I said, I was going to go through the DNI charter stuff, but there's just nothing there. I just can't. It's just so dumb. And there's just no point. Speaking of dumb things, though, we're not moving away from the FIA entirely. Speaking of dumb things, really dumb, stupid, you might say. The FIA is not in high regard with drivers nor fans and haven't been for a long time. And this guy, Mohammed bin Sulayem, head of the FIA, there's elections coming up apparently. There's been, whispers, rumors, allegations that maybe allegedly he's been like funneling money off to certain groups who have voting power for who is FIA president. And, I feel like that really feeds into that GPDA thing of if you're going to fine us for stupid things and take money from us and put it in the FIA coffers, you need to be transparent about where that money's going. And I feel like that's really tied to that. But beyond that, his response to the drivers, which was, I run the FIA, you drive the cars. Shut up. Shut up and drive the cars. Shut up and let me run the FIA. I mean, I don't necessarily think the drivers should be the ones determining where the money goes. I mean, they can contribute and make suggestions. But a bit like the GPDA statement, it's just that. It's just we think it would be good if you did this. But I mean, the FIA should be the FIA. Now that said, do I like this guy? No. Do I think everything he does is above board and good? No. And let's read through some of these. FIA seeks rule change after president allegations. Only from Andrew Benson from the BBC, one of the most esteemed F1 journalists that there is. Can we get in on this a bit more? Here we go. Motorsport's governing body wants to change its rules to limit the ways its leadership can be held to account for bad governance. Cool. That's good. A set of revisions to the statutes governing the Audit and Ethics Committee has been circulated to member clubs to be approved at a vote of the FIA General Assembly on the 13th of December, so in a couple of days. These would ensure that any ethics complaints were overseen by the FIA President and the President of the Senate rather than the Senate itself. So let's make sure that only a few people can oversee any complaints that are made about us ethically, even if those ethics complaints maybe involve us. Man. The proposals come after a year in which the Ethics and Audit Committees investigated a number of allegations about the conduct of FIA President Mohammed bin Sulayem. These include questions about the finances of his office, the establishment of a 1.5 million President's Fund to pay member clubs, which vote for the FIA President. Neither of these were progressed, and two separate allegations that bin Sulayem interfered with the operations of a Grand Prix in 2023 were dismissed. That was along the lines of, I think it was Alonso, suggesting that he didn't deserve a penalty for some infringement. The suggestion was that he was trying to pressure people to be lenient. Not so much that he was into like race fixing and stuff like that. It was very soft. It was very around the edges, but it's still like not a good look. What else is good from this? The changes to the statutes, which have been seen by BBC Sport, remove the ability of the compliance officer to report to the audit committee and remove the audit committee's ability to investigate any matter unless asked by the president of the Senate. So in other words, when complaints are made, the president of the Senate will be the person to determine whether it gets investigated. And matters will be determined by the president of the Senate and MBS himself. Wow. This would mean the FIA president controlled the appointment of the head of the ethics committee and removed the role of the Senate and compliance officer in his operations. The president of the FIA Senate, Carmelo Sanz de Barros, is a member of bin Sulayem's four-person leadership team. In essence, critics say the changes would neutralize the ability of whistleblowers to expose questionable behavior to the Ethics and Audit Committee and the ability of those committees to pursue actions against any wrongdoing. The Senate, which no longer has to be sent any ethics reports, is a 12-person body that includes yada, 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 Mexican billionaire Carlos Slim. For some reason. It's amazing when you're rich. You can just rock up and be like, I'm going to give you a whole bunch of money, but also I'm on the committee now. I just am. Deal with it. Great stuff. I mean, look, I try and judge every issue that comes up on its merits. And when something, when I think the FAA have done something okay, despite their motives, I usually try and say, yeah, look, this is actually okay. But when they do wrong, boy, they really do wrong, don't they? It's just really weird. I just can't help but think that if there was some new leadership there, things might be a bit better. And everybody might be a little bit happier. And then Max Verstappen might do less of this.
I think if I get a few more, I'll headbutt someone.
And instead, Norris will be doing this.
I'm getting a hard on in the middle of the race.
Etc. How about we switch over to, what will we be going? 30 minutes. Okay. Oh, one more story. If you've made it this far and you're only here for F1 news, that's fine. But if you haven't heard about this and you want a weird story, stick around. So for a while, I've been keeping one eye on what used to be called, was it called W Series? And then it basically went bust. And then FIA rolled it into their own kind of thing, which they called F1 Academy, which basically was an all-female academy, and they aligned it with the F1 teams. So this isn't really how it works, but there's one representative team, quote-unquote F1 team, that races in F1 Academy. But really all it is like a car with the livery on it. It's just so that if a casual Formula One driver accidentally, Formula One fan clicks on it, they happen to see it. And they're like, oh, Red Bull, Ferrari, I know those teams. In reality, two of those, like for the Red Bull and Ferrari team might be run by the same team behind the scenes, but with two different liveries on the cars. So it's a bit weird. But anyway. So what happened was Abby Pulling has been dominating the series, and there was a race, and F1 Academy does that weird thing where they give out points for qualifying. So there was a race that was washed out. One of the drivers got 2 points for getting pole in the qualifying, but then the race was washed out. So then we carry on to the next event. Abby Pulling wins or gets enough points to be declared the champion. So F1 Academy has its first champion. And Abby Pulling scored enough points and she was declared the champion. And it was very emotional, as you would expect. Huge scenes, big emotions, huge achievement for her. But then this happened. Abby Pulling will need to win the F1 Academy title again due to consequences of an extra race being added to this weekend's schedule in Abu Dhabi. So imagine that. Imagine Max Verstappen in Las Vegas, wins the championship, and then they go, oh, whoops, but one of the sprint races got washed out, so we're going to add a sprint race to, Abu Dhabi. So you're actually not champion mathematically because someone else might win. Like, what are you talking about? Even if that's something you have the power to do, once you, allow a driver to, achieve winning the championship and they go through that, you can't take it away from them. But that is exactly what they did. Let's get some text-to-image AI generation going. Skip.
Yeah, so this is Abby Pulling, who we had on Sky Sports News on Tuesday of this week, and we celebrated her as the F1 Academy champion. Now, a race was cancelled in the last round in Qatar. The race has been reinstated here.
What? What are you talking about? How can you do that?
Yeah, and as a result of that, it actually means that technically speaking, Abby Pulling is no longer the champion, because Dorian Pan could theoretically gain 84 points.
Mr. Burns was taken to Springfield Hospital where he was declared dead. He was then transferred to a better hospital where his condition was upgraded to alive.
In this Abu Dhabi weekend, it would be highly fanciful. She would need to score 75 points for 3 wins, 6 points for 3 pole positions. and the 3 points for the 3 fastest laps in the race, but that would give her one more than Pooling's current 83-point lead. So it means that Pooling would have to not score a single point this weekend, which is very unlikely because she's yet.
So they went through all of that, all of these ridiculous, embarrassing headlines. We've added another race. Sorry, I know you were McLaren champion, but we're going to rip that off you. And actually, you're not champion because we're going to add another race, and mathematically someone else might win it if you score no points. Luckily, I don't think it's covered here because I grabbed this story from before it all went down. Luckily for Abby Pooling, she, I think, got pole straight away and was re-declared the champion. So one season, Abby Pooling, dual champion. She's great. I mean, it's just good to have stories about female drivers. I just wish that they weren't these kind of stories. But I guess it's, I don't know. I guess whatever draws attention to these people, whatever gets their names into people's brains so that they start thinking about it, the better. Because I know I've gone out on the limb and made lots of videos about the potential of female drivers in Formula One, what the barriers are. I cop a lot of abuse for it, but whatever. I ain't changing my mind. And the disappointing thing is, how many people say, how far away from we from having a female driver in Formula One? People always say 10 years. It's always 10 years away. And the sad reality is what they mean by that is at least 10 years away if all goes well. And then the problem is things don't usually go well. So it's great to have F1 Academy. I guess. I know it has its people, it has its detractors, and their arguments usually go along the lines of, we don't need a separate formula or racing series for women. We just need to remove all the barriers and give them support so that they can get into the real racing series. Because the more you divide and say F1 for boys, that series over there for girls, the more you entrench that idea that they should be separate. So if you're one of those people who is of a mindset that they shouldn't be separate, this is seen as potentially a step back. I don't know that it's necessarily a step back, but that's how their argument goes. I'm also, though, not a fan of that. Let's just do, I mean, if we're going to say and mean it, that women in Formula One is 10 years away, but we need to do work to get that there, to get that happening, let's do the work. That's where I'm at. So, the season's done, everybody. It's all over. We've got in our store on superlicense.fm, if you want to buy a Superlicense shirt, it's modeled here by me, yours truly. You can go and check that out. Buy one for yourself. Be ready for next season. Buy one for a friend if you need a last-minute gift idea. But yeah, Max Verstappen, Drivers' Champion, McLaren, Constructors' Champion. It's all over. There's a little bit of fun to come. Zach and I are going to be doing, as I said, a end of season podcast with our old friends, Box and Neutrals, probably next week. So it should be out, I would think, in a week from about this time next week, it should be out. So that will be good fun. But we're probably not going to cover any of those topics. That's why I wanted to cover them here. The next podcast is probably going to be like highlights from the year. It's usually highlights from the year. And we all go around and just have a good fun time. And it's a nice way to just set the year off adrift and say farewell. And then we all put our feet up for a little while and take a well-earned rest. So I hope that you are looking forward to having a good rest. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast throughout the year, for watching the videos, watching the live streams. Whether you watch the live streams, whether you watch the highlight clips, whether you watch the shorts, whether you follow us on TikTok, whatever. Thanks so much. It's funny the things that do well. I always think maybe we should be learning from the things that do well and just do more of them. But then I think, we can do things that do well as well. But I also want to cover things that no one else is talking about. And that's my commitment. So anyway, I'm going to sign off. Thanks for watching. I'll cut this one into a couple of highlight clips and post them on YouTube, but then that'll probably be it for the year, I'd say. So enjoy your off season. I'll be back. We'll be back, I think, early next year, probably before testing or around testing, something like that. To cover off some of the narratives. So everybody take care. Have a great break.